my mom was in a car accident, but was hit by a drunk driver while she was pregnant, and like went through the windshield. And
we got to a point where we wanted to have kids. So we were older. We were, like in our late 30s, and it wasn't happening. And her quality of her eggs were not as good as they used to. We did IVF. It was a weird, scary time for any process. It's daunting, and kudos to the women, because the guys definitely could not handle it. Back in, and Diana's doctor called that morning and said, "Don't come, none of the embryos survive." They said, "Listen, we have a 8-day-old baby, Eva. Do you want her? I need to know within a couple hours." And she got pregnant. She was able to get pregnant, and they had to deliver Grayson to save her life. And we were only at 25, almost 26 weeks.
Hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. This podcast seeks to explore the minds of those who not only understand or experience empathy, but of those who wish to take action, build and practice empathetic behavior through conscious decision and responsible lifestyle choices. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, this podcast might be just for you. So sit back, relax, and use what you were born with: empathy.
all right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Empathy Podcast. We have a very, very special episode today, and we have a very special guest today. We have Brian with us on the call, on the line, and he's going to be sharing an unbelievable story, and it's unlike anything that we've shared on this podcast. It's definitely something very, very unique, and also something I think probably a lot of people are dealing with in today's world, and something that should be highlighted and focused more on. And he even wrote a book about it to share, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I think it's we've talked about children on the podcast before. We've had talked about food and nutrition and some stuff like that, but we haven't shared a story like this when it has to deal with birth and challenges within that. And I think a lot of people face something like, maybe not exactly to what you're going to share, but even like I think about my own childhood, like how I was born. Like my mom was in a car accident, but was hit by a drunk driver while she was pregnant, and like went through the windshield. And so that had an impact, I think, on my sister, either me or my sister. I can't remember which one, but that makes an impact on the birth. And, it changes, it has an impact, you know what I mean? But there's other people that have an impact that maybe the way they're eating or whatever, can make an impact on the birth and stuff like that. And like some people don't know, even I've seen like the food on the shelf for the babies when you're whether you're before birth, while birth, or even when they're brand new babies, like just the food there that they have sometimes could be really, damaging for the baby, which is really like something people don't know about. So we're going to maybe cover some of these topics here, but Brian, if you want to share, a little about your story, maybe some of the things, that we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. I've been looking forward to this and excited to be here. So let's dive into it. Let's see. So I met Diana when we were 15 years old in high school. And we, through the years, finally got together and have been living together for, I always have to do the math on this, 39 years? And 34 years. 34 years. There you go. That's when we met. And so we've been together. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, and it's been kind of a crazy ride. So 34 years. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, and during our our marriage, we got to a point where we wanted to have kids, and we waited a long time. So we were older. We were like in our late 30s, and it wasn't happening. We were trying. We tried to not have kids for so long, and then when we wanted kids, we stopped trying to not have kids, and then we couldn't have kids. It was a big mess. But it finally got to a point where we were a little bit stressed out about it, so we got ourselves checked out, And Diana's egg production was lessened, and her quality of her eggs were not as good as they used to be. So that posed challenges in getting pregnant. And we were at that moment, which I don't know if you know this part of the story, but right at that moment, we met with Eric, my friend Eric Mish, and we were in a Starbucks, and he talked to us about this green shake and this, 10-day transformation.
Speaking of transformation, it's transformation season. So many people are getting the ultimate lifestyle transformation, exactly what Brian had described in this video. And you can see the results. We're going to see the results is what it did for him and his family, which is unbelievable. Today, I have a very special video that I created. I'm going to have down below that explains exactly how to get started on the ultimate lifestyle transformation, how to get $150 off. And this is a very special sponsor of the podcast because the proceeds from these purchases are going to be going to help premature babies and in people in the NICU as well, which is absolutely incredible. And it's a win, 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 win all the way around. Not only do you transform, are looking, performing, and feeling your best, and you're going to be helping Brian and his family. You're going to be helping babies and their family, and you're going to be helping support this podcast so that it can help to grow further and further and expand for these stories to help impact even more people. So comment down below if you're ready to transform, and we'll get you started. Check the link in below, the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation, to get started today.
And so we kind of we're like, okay, all right, let's just check it out. But what had happened and what he didn't know is right before that, we did IVF. So we were trying to do in vitro, and it was a weird, scary time for anyone that has to go through that process. It's daunting, and kudos to the women because the guys definitely could not handle it. There was multiple shots every single day into her stomach for months and months. It was just incredible what she went through. And then what happened is finally, eggs are produced. We extract the eggs. Then I do my part. They try to get them fertilized. And then there we are, the day of implantation. So we created some embryos in a dish. We're going to put the embryos back in. And Diana's doctor called that morning and said, don't come, none of the embryos survived. So that was a really, really rough morning day, if you can imagine. And so much so that we were just like, you know what, we're probably not going to have kids. This is just not going to happen. And then cue the 10-day transformation with Eric Mish, because our health was all over the place. It was just, we could eat whatever we wanted because nothing was really happening, but we didn't know that all the things that were actually happening inside our body. So, and I'm kind of paralleling the story here. We went right into doing the 10-day transformation, which was a phenomenal experience for both of us. And during that time, I was telling our story about the in vitro, and a friend at work said, hey, listen, I don't know if you've ever known this, but we've fostered to adopt, and we're on our third child right now that we're looking at, hopefully being able to adopt, and maybe you should check it out. And we were ignorant to the whole foster care program, and I didn't even know that you could foster to adopt. And we went through the program. 30% of the people dropped out after the first week because you have to take a 6-week course. It's heart-wrenching, the stories and the cases that we had to follow and go through. And it is just incredible. But we graduated, we became foster certified, and, we were able to, at that time, kind of talk about, age. That's what you could say. You could say age, I want baby, we want, toddler, teenager, what have you. And, we wanted to a baby, and they knew we wanted to adopt as well. And it was like a week later after graduation, they said, listen, we have a 8-day-old baby, Eva. Do you want her? I need to know within a couple hours. I'm like, what? You usually get 9 months. But it was like, bam, a week. And we went forward with it, and we had little baby Eva. So we were fostering her. And quickly in that process, we learned that we were not going to be able to keep her, because what the parents did was something very mild. They had to go through a process and classes and so forth to be able to be deemed fit to parent, which they were doing, and completely incredible parents, actually. It was just a little mishap. And so we knew early on we were not going to be able to keep Eva. But that short little stint that we thought was going to be a month or two turned into 5 months. And the day that we had to give Eva back just totally broke our hearts. And we were done. We're not going to have kids. That's it. Can't do it. Let's just focus on our business, because people were asking us what we were doing health-wise. We looked phenomenal. We had this glow about us. I lost 12 pounds in 10 days. She lost 10 pounds. And it was way more than that, as you know, way more than that. Her skin issues went away. My bloating totally went away. Energy was through the roof. Like, everything was just totally transformed. So we just focused on that. That was kind of our baby. And we built a huge, massive, thriving business. But then we got a chance to move to Mexico. And part of the reason that Dinah said, yes, I want to go, is because she did all the research. And one of our friends that lived in Cancun happened to be the acupuncturist for one of the top IVF doctors in Cancun, with a huge, high success rate. And she said, I'm ready to try it again. And so, lo and behold, we moved to Mexico, brought all our superfoods, and she got pregnant. She was able to get pregnant. So that was phenomenal. We were extremely ecstatic, although she was on bed rest the whole time, because now we're like 41, and it turned out that everything was going great until we got about halfway, just over halfway. She developed severe preeclampsia, which basically her blood pressure shot up. It would not come down, and they had to deliver Grayson to save her life. And we were only at 25, almost 26 weeks. And when they delivered him, he was 12 inches long, 1.5 pounds. And then her body just started completely shutting down. So she was in the ICU, he's in the NICU, and my whole world is totally turned upside down. Insanity. So it was as advanced as their IVF was and successful as it was. The NICU part of the Mexican hospital was like 30 years behind, but we didn't know it, because you don't prepare to have a baby in the NICU or a baby that's born at 26 weeks. So it was, when we were posting pictures and so forth, it was NICU nurses from around the world were like, listen, he's not in the best position. He's not even in an incubator. He had saran wrap. He was in a bed, open bed, with saran wrap and a heat lamp. That was it. So again, we didn't know any better, but then started researching and found out that, wow, yeah, we probably should move him. And so we went through that whole entire process, moved him, air transported him to Miami, where we were in the NICU another 84 days. So a total of 105 days in the NICU. But during that time, someone said, hey, listen, you should write a book. This is insane. People were checking in on because we were going live. Just the power of the community and social media that we had was absolutely incredible. And so people would tune in like Truman Show every day, like, well, what's the updates? What's going on with baby Grayson, And so so we finally were able to get him transported, get him, in and out of the hospital. And then fast forward 3 years, now we're in Orlando, and at 3 years old, Grayson was diagnosed with autism. So he's on the spectrum, and he'll be 7 in July. So he's had more life than most people, by 6 years old, he's lived more life than most people. But that book, you should write a book, kind of always stuck out to me. And I've never written a book before. I don't really know even how to spell really well. And I didn't really read a lot when I was little, but here I go. I started writing this book, and lo and behold, it took 3 years, but we just published it about 8 weeks ago. And the goal for that book it's really like, it was therapeutic to write the book, number one, a lot of tears shed. But also, one of the main goals is to spread awareness, and all the funds that were, the net funds that we're making from the book are all going to be going toward getting proper incubators into Mexican hospitals. So that's why I'm, partly why I'm here today. I want to do speaking events, all these things just to give back the way that we were given to.
Yeah, first of all, I think your story is amazing and it's really incredible, and it just shows like the fighting spirit and like, what a lot of what we're all about. We're fighters, we're survivors, and we'll do whatever we can. And it's just an amazing story there. And I think you're right. A lot of people can learn so much from this. I feel like I was just writing down some things, that were like coming to mind, that like things that I could relate with, and things I think other people could relate with, or maybe even some listeners, or even people that I might be thinking of, that like, hey, maybe they need to hear this and could learn, and it could help them, or maybe someone they know, right? Yeah. And maybe you answer this in the book or somewhere, or maybe people ask this, but I think it's a common question, at least in the world that we live in, you know what I mean, where it's like health and wellness and all that sort of stuff, and is sometimes maybe, why do you think it happened, this way? And that's often a tough question, but maybe there's been time, early on, that's too soon, but maybe there's been enough time, 7 years, whereas have you reflected or thought about like, why do you think this happened? And that's sometimes maybe a question, that not only why, but maybe also how we can help others to prevent something similar to happening.
We've often, and especially going through it, it was, why? Why us? Why are we doing this? And, the book, it goes into more in depth a little bit, but really the question was, the frustration was, we're good people. We do the right thing. We just want to have a baby. And, you have people that are super irresponsible and just having babies. I mean, what we learned in the foster program is, it is easier to have another baby than to go through what's necessary to be deemed a fit parent. Can you imagine? So they just let the kid go and then just go have another kid. And so that's where, the frustration came into, where we've been trying so hard, so many different ways, so much money, and we just want to have a baby. And so when I reflect back, it's when you're going through it, is always the question, why? Well, for us, if I were to look back on it, it was a complete miracle. I mean, when we got to Miami, I showed them pictures of the equipment and what they had done with Grayson and for Grayson and so forth, and they were like, it's amazing that he survived, number one. Number two, in Mexico, the doctor must have been phenomenal because he kept him alive. But now, being here with all the equipment in Miami, he'll thrive. And it was just a huge wake-up call that I don't want to give this one part away, but we find out how little the survival rate is in Mexico for babies that are born at that gestation. So for us, it was a very distinct time where I was going to write the book, procrastination. And I don't really get to go to church that often, but I was able to go this one Sunday, and the pastor said, hey, listen, have you ever thought about or asked what God wants you to do with your life? And I was like, not really. I usually just go with what I want, but he said, let's do it. Let's go for it. And so he just said, take a minute, close your eyes, just go. And it was like a shot. It was immediate. It was write the book, speak about it, transform lives. And so maybe in some way we had to go through all this craziness survive it to then go back and help other people get through it, because the NICU changes you. It's like, yeah, thank goodness I haven't experienced jail, but everyone that I've known that's gotten out of jail said, man, jail changes you. Well, the NICU changes you. I can't describe it. I don't know how, but in the moment that you're in it, you can't imagine getting out of it. And so now years later, yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I tell NICU parents is stay on the roller coaster, be in communication, and accept help, because you're going to need it. So I don't know to answer that question, but hopefully if we could save one baby's life, then I look back and the work that I put into the book and, speaking and so forth, it'll all be worth it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think someone said this quote and I love it. We're the most qualified to help the people that we used to be, or we're the most qualified to help those that, from experiences that we've experienced, so you're the most qualified, one of the most qualified people to help people that have been through what you've been through,
Yeah.
And similar with what I've been through, what I've experienced and overcome, like I'm one of the most qualified people to help someone else that's, to overcome something that I've overcome. Right.
I love that.
I think it is a gift, that we have now, because if you didn't have that knowledge or experience, it'd be hard to help someone in that situation. And that's what happens in the past. You would see someone in some situations, maybe they're similar like this, and you just can only pray and just, wish the best, and maybe hope they're in good hands. And maybe they are in good hands. Maybe they're not. We don't know. But it's nothing you can do, really, right? But when you're sometimes when you're in a situation where you've been there, you're like, hey, this is the path. I walked this path before. It was really hard, but these are the pitfalls that I hit. And these are some of the places that you can go to. These are the people that I met. These are the people that give you the best chance. Some of the percentages now. You didn't know percentages before, and that gives you like it's nothing's perfect. It's not like this is the answer. It's 100%. No, you can increase it. You can increase it. From a 0.001% chance to a 50% chance. And that's are you saying there's a chance? Like, yeah, that's pretty. That's amazing, right? And but a challenge I've seen, and one of my friends who I was thinking of also when you were speaking, who had a pregnancy when she was older, right? Maybe, past 30s, maybe, mid 30s to late 30s, right? Where it becomes a little bit more challenging sometimes, right? Whether it's, the situations that you talked about from the eggs, right? Or sometimes it's on the guy's side too.
Yeah.
The guy's like, hey, you're not, have what is necessary, And so either way, there's some challenges there. And my friend was facing some similar challenges, like what you were describing. However, I knew a little bit of your story already, right? Like I was watching and engaging. And I know many stories, as our community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know my own story that I've experienced from health and food and what we share here. And also my mom's situation, she was on, over 25 medications and
Crazy.
On less than 5 now, which is amazing. Like, pretty much on her deathbed and now, able to work out on the gym on a daily basis when she couldn't even do that since 18. Like I was saying, she had a car accident and she always played in her mind, oh, I can't do this because I was hit by a drunk driver. That's like the story she told herself over and over and over until you realize you can do some things even though that happened, But anyways, these things, and I know many stories also of people that either couldn't conceive, children, and then they made some changes in their lifestyle or food or diet or whatever, and now they're able to, right?
Yep.
And so I have a friend and she was struggling and I wanted to help her. And I have all this information, right? Some of what you said, not the whole story, but some information like that of like what's possible. And she had a baby shower and I I thought of what gift do I want to give for the baby shower, right? And she didn't have the baby yet, right? But there was some challenges, leading up to it, and I was helping her with food for during that time, with some recommendations, things to add, maybe cut out this, videos, information, stories like yours. And one thing that happened was, what I decided on the baby shower is like, what's the best gift, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many gifts that people give on a baby shower: diapers and toys and books and all kinds of things that you would imagine for kids, right? But I was like, the best thing I think I could give you is the best chance for this kid to like live a long, healthy life and get the best food in his body that, from the earliest age that he possibly can. And I got her an ultimate lifestyle transformation. And that was the gift.
Oatgrass.
Yeah.
Oatgrass too. Got to get that oatgrass. Go ahead.
And that was the gift that I gave her. Obviously, there's more information, from what's entailed in it. But that gift, what I believe, is going to give her, and it gave the baby a super healthy baby, incredibly healthy baby, amazing pregnancy. Who knows? Maybe if I did nothing, it would have been healthy either way. Who knows? Because I've been helping along the way. However, I'm aware of there are challenges, and I'm also aware of, let's do our best chance to set you up for success. You know what I mean? Like I even said, I don't have kids yet, but I'm preparing. Before I have kids, the 9 months period, I've said this for a long time, but I said in that 9 months, I'm going to read every single possible book I possibly can. And because it's going to happen, 9 months, you already know, from that time, as much as I possibly can to prepare myself to know the best things I could learn for that age range, from that 0 to 4, 0 to 5, like what are the best things to learn? What are the best things to teach? All that kind of stuff. Right. And I've just thought like that, but now I know more about nutrition. And so anyways, what happens is if you feed the baby, like for her situation, her baby's fed from her breast milk, right? And she's feeding herself, and then the breast milk is feeding the baby, and the baby's incredibly healthy. And that's a good chance, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times a lot of people have children sometimes, and it's a lot of nutrients that are used for the kid. And then sometimes they're depleted sometimes, right? Of the nutrients to create the baby, and then giving the breast milk, sometimes they can't because they don't have enough nutrients. And then if they do, there's not as much nutrients in the milk. And so there's,
Totally. I know I'm a firm believer that the first go around, we were just eating whatever we wanted. And, how is it that from right after that point, it was almost a week later, we started doing a transformation. We started adding these superfoods to our diet. We started eliminating the sugars. We started eliminating some of the, meats and processed things, and started reading labels and putting these massive nutrients into our body that there we go, our, 7 months later. The environment was set up and transformed before we started the second round of IVF. And then during the pregnancy, we have a whole protocol. I'm sure you have it, if not, but we have, first, second, third trimester protocols that, I was like, drink that, drink this, drink this, drink this, drink this, right? Some of it is for milk production. So it's getting the nutrients to Diana, to the baby. And here's the kicker, which part of the story will continue after Grayson was born, and all that it took to get pregnant. 2 years later, where we continued on this superfood. Look, I was muling in superfood to Mexico. Like I was like, give me my superfood, I'll figure it out. I literally lived, survived on it. And so how is it then 2 years later, she gets pregnant totally naturally, full term birth, and that's our second child, Nathan. Like, so crazy. It's got to be something in the water.
Can I add something to that I have a little bit of relatability as well? In terms of Mexico, is I went to Belize. Maybe you've heard of Belize, and you've seen a little bit of the stories of Belize.
Yeah.
But Belize, part of the reason I personally was going to go to Belize is because when I was working overseas in the Middle East, I was engaged to my ex-fiance, and we were together, and we were talking about children, right?
Yep.
And at the time, I was undecided, because maybe I'm, maybe thinking a little bit like what you guys were thinking. Hey, maybe now it's not the right time. Maybe later. I'm thinking about my business. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about traveling. All the things I'm thinking about. And we got in a little mini fight or whatever. And it was like, because her mindset is like, well, yeah, like that. It's like, that's the reason. Like, that's the reason that we're even in this relationship. It's like having kids, you know what I mean? Because she's from the Philippines and
okay.
Muslim and very traditional. And so the mindset is like her parents, having many kids, and that's just normal, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's in our culture in the West, it's like, yeah, maybe later, let's have some fun. Maybe let's see the world, or let's try a few businesses. Then we're like, we're like, oh shoot, it's too late.
Yep.
We should have done it when we were 21. But then it's like, then you're like, oh, the shame in our culture for doing it when you're young. There's a lot of things, right?
It's a mess.
So I was thinking of some of these things, right? And my mind has shifted by a lot since this time from all the things I've learned, right? Since this conversation. But going to Belize, I was going to, go there with her at the time, right?
Okay.
But I went back to the U.S. and COVID hit and the world shut down, and she was in the Middle East because that's where we met. We're working in the Middle East. And
you're not going anywhere.
We couldn't go nowhere, and the relationship was too new. We've been together for 2 years. But that's still new, and it's just so hard. Long distance is like nearly impossible, especially like from that culture. It's hard for any culture, but it's even harder for like these more traditional, old fashioned, small type cultures, small town type culture versus big city, and so that was tough, but that was, what ended up happening is learning all of this information now and having a good grasp on how to prepare myself. And I think that's what we could do best, is just prepare and learn, and I'm grateful. Like, I mean, if I would have had kids when I was 21, even though that might be ideal, I don't know if I'd be prepared enough because of how our culture and society is set up. I don't know if I was in the right mind frame to really actually take care of a kid at that time. But now, it's, I feel better prepared. You never know. You never know until it happens, right? However, I do think that we can learn from people like you and people like, I have another podcast of what is a healthy relationship. Another example, like similar from you, 39, 34 years, learning from experienced people that are doing it, that have been through it, is very, very valuable. Like, I wouldn't try to learn a business from someone that's never ran a business, or I wouldn't try to go to my doctor and say, can you fix my car, if he doesn't know anything about being a mechanic, right?
Yep.
I do believe it's similar. Like, you have this experience, and it's very valuable to learn from you and others that have experiences, like that, to learn from them.
Well, I think one of the things that I don't like to live in regret, but it's a real thing. And it was always, for me more than Diana, we don't have enough money. We both come from divorced parents. So I want to be sure. I want to make sure I don't really have my career set up. We don't have a lot of money in savings. You need $10,000 for the first year of a kid, all this kind of stuff. And you procrastinate until, for us, it was too late. And so then we had to go through what we had to go through. And I'm seeing that a lot more in the US anyway. But that's fine if that's what you want to do and you want to do your career. But if you do feel like you want to have kids, and you're not, I don't want to even say that, but like if you're somewhat secure, just have the kids. It's gonna work. It somehow, some way, if you're dedicated and you're gonna be all in, it's gonna work. And I just tell people, don't wait if you feel like you're both want it and you're at some type of responsible age, then go for it. I mean, because who knows, it might not happen, and then the regret of that would be crazy. And I it's a faith thing, and it's, if I want to take it out of the kids, which is obviously super dramatic and very committed, but people always tell me, oh, I might not be able to pay my bills, and I'm like, well, when was the last time you weren't able to pay your bills? And they're like, well, I guess I've always somehow managed. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So I firmly believe that if you're fully committed and you have the child, if you want a child, things will work out. I mean, how could we have imagined, having a kid at 26 weeks? There is no book on that. There's no book to prepare you for that. And there's an array of issues that could happen. But then there you are, faced with, what do I do now? Does the insurance even kick in? Do I have insurance? Like, what? I'm in Mexico. It's different in Mexico. You don't just get to say, bill my insurance. You have to pay every day. You can't leave without paying. So you've got to pay first, and then you get the care, kind of a thing. So, but somehow, some way we made it. He's $1 million baby, but I'm always worried about money. But here we are. He's going to be 7. So, the uncertainty or the indecisiveness is what'll just eat you up.
Yeah, I think it's seemingly becoming more common, like nowadays versus, let's say, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, as an example. And that seems like, oh my gosh, that's so long ago. Like, that's a really short amount of time in human history, right? So let's say 40, 50 years ago, like having a kid was like a lot of the things that you would say would be like, yeah, no problem. But now, what do you think is different nowadays? Or some of the things that are different nowadays of like why people would maybe say that they don't want a kid? And I'll just share just a couple examples of what I used to think, and like some of the things that I was afraid of, like, oh, I'm afraid of the future, or I'm afraid of, these wars that might happen, or I'm afraid of just disaster. I might be, looking at that stuff, or looking at, I used to watch, like natural disasters. I was so fascinated, with like the hurricanes and the earthquakes and the floods and like all these things, and like, but that was really like playing into the fear of like, saying, well, why, playing into that, like, would you have a kid? And then, willingly knowing that, that you might be putting them in these dangerous positions. Like, these are like the things that would go through my mind and maybe some other people's minds, that maybe prevent them. Like, what are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, whatever you focus on is going to be what happens. But I mean, my grandpa was in World War II, and, back then they're like, oh, I don't want to bring a kid into this world. That was, 70 some years ago. So it's like, I think we always have that going on. And it's just excuses. It's just more excuses. But you feed on it because you're like, well, but it's valid. And then you go out searching and talking to other people about your valid point, and then they confirm it. And then you're like, see, I was right. And you can do that until you can't have kids. Then what? Now you have to live with that. There's the movie Braveheart. He stood there and said, listen, you can go to war and fight and you may die, or you could run back home and live a little bit longer and die with massive regret. But right now you have a choice. Choice is a powerful thing. Decision is dramatic. Decision is, do I let my baby die in Mexico, or do I transport him to the U.S.? That's a decision. That's not really a choice. So, but we have choices every day. And if you say, okay, I'm going to stand up and fight for my freedom, and if I die, at least I made that powerful choice, instead of living in massive regret. So I think there's always going to be something that you can use as an excuse to stop doing whatever it is that you want to do. Or you could just do it, have faith, and, go for it and see what happens. Either way, the time's going to pass. So if this is something you want, and just my opinion, if it's something you want, that the year is going to pass, the 5 years is going to pass, the 40 minutes is going to pass. So you might as well just, there's a million excuses not to, just find one, two, and focus on that.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. And that was amazing. And that's all I had, for now. Is there anything else as we have to wrap this up that you maybe want to add or share?
Hey, I just appreciate your time. I appreciate your audience. And it's been so great to just get together and connect with you finally after all these years. I just want to leave people with, if there's anything about this project that resonates with you, go on to my website, brianheilig.com, get the book. All proceeds go to helping babies in Mexico. If you know any NICU parents, give them a hug. They just need a hug, be the person that they can talk to and just be okay to listen. And for NICU parents that are in it, stay on the ride, baby. Stay on the roller coaster and be in communication and accept help. That's it, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And for anyone that's listening, we'll put all the links down below to the book, Breathe, Eat, Poop, and Grow, the website, and any other relevant information we'll put down below. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. And we'll be speaking soon. Have a great one.
That was good.
Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Please, please, please make sure that you guys share this with anyone that you think will find this interesting. And also make sure that you guys are subscribed, because I can see a lot of you guys are listening, but you aren't subscribed.